Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are doing a really technical, but I think highly practical comparison. We're looking at two compounds that have, well, fundamentally changed how people think about recovery and growth. The oral growth hormone, secretagogues, GHS for short. Basically, compounds that signal your body, hey, maybe release some more growth hormone.
Yeah, and our mission today is like a generational breakdown, isn't it? We're putting the first-gen workhorse, MK-677, Ibutamoren, head-to-head against its successor, the optimized, more targeted version, MK-777 or Acetamoren. We really want to dig into what exactly did they change, and did those changes actually fix the, let's be honest, frustrating side effects that made that first one kind of tricky for a lot of users?
It's a great example of pharmaceutical refinement.
Mm.
GHS compounds, they're GHSR1A agonists. Simple terms. They basically mimic ghrelin. Now, ghrelin often gets called the hunger hormone, right?
Yeah.
But it's way more complex. A metabolic master switch really tells the pituitary release growth hormone. And that's great. Muscle recovery, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But, and this is the kicker with the first generation, ghrelin itself is just inherently messy. You hit that ghrelin receptor hard, you don't just get the GH release. No, you also unleash intense hunger and a cascade of other metabolic things downstream. So the big challenge for the folks developing MK-777 was, okay, how do we flip the GH switch without setting off the hunger alarm? Can we cut that wire?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that mechanism. So
Yeah.
MK-677, the first gen, reliable, maybe a bit of a blunt instrument, and MK-777 is billed as optimized, targeted. What does optimized actually mean, like at the receptor level, affinity-wise?
It's all about precision, surgical precision almost.
Mm.
MK-677, it is high affinity, it's effective, binds strongly, reliably, gets the job done, no question. But MK-7777, it boasts higher and crucially more targeted binding. Think of it maybe like this. MK-677 is skeleton key. Sure, it unlocks the main door, that's your GH release, but it also kind of rattles the whole door frame. Maybe sets off a nearby car alarm, that's the hunger and other side effects. MK-777, on the other hand, is like a perfectly custom milled key. Slides in, turns the lock cleanly, only engages the mechanism you actually want. It minimizes all those other disruptive secondary interactions. That increased specificity, that's really the foundation of it being next gen.
Got it. And the main goal for both is still boosting growth hormone and IGF-1. It's the signals for muscle growth, repair, recovery. So if both are hitting that primary target well, how different is the experience of that GH boost for the user? Is it noticeable?
Well, the pattern of release seems to be quite crucial. MK-677 tends to give you a strong yes, but a sustained pulsatile rise. Imagine sort of a big uneven tidal wave surging every few hours. It works, absolutely. But those massive swings, they can be pretty disruptive to your system. MK-777 also gives a strong overall rise in GH, definitely. But the release pattern itself is described as a longer, more controlled pulse.
Ah, okay. So it's less about the total amount of GH released over, say, 24 hours maybe, and more about the delivery. Like MK-677 is the sledgehammer approach, maybe, and MK-777 is more like a precision robotic arm placing things carefully.
That's actually a pretty good analogy.
Yeah.
That controlled pulse, theoretically, allows the body to utilize the hormone more effectively, more gently, instead of just dealing with these huge, sometimes overwhelming spikes. And importantly for the user, both are highly orally bioavailable, so no needles needed.
Yeah.
Though the sources do suggest MK-777 might have slightly higher, maybe more stable metabolic properties, which hints again at that pharmacological fine-tuning.
Right. Okay. We've got the mechanics down. Let's shift to why people actually reach for these. The shared benefits are pretty clear, aren't they? Muscle preservation, better recovery from workouts, maybe some anti-aging potential tied to those higher GH levels.
Exactly. But we shouldn't overlook the effects on the brain, the central nervous system. Both of these compounds get talked about a lot for their impact there, not just on the body. Users often report things like increased motivation, better mental drive, focus, and significantly improved sleep quality.
Yeah, I find that dual action really fascinating. You get the physical repair happening while you sleep, and then you wake up feeling more mentally sharp, more driven. Sounds like a pretty potent combo for anyone, pushing their physical or mental limits.
And if we try and link that back to the mechanism we were just talking about, it's plausible that MK-777's smoother, more controlled pulse might lead to more sustained cognitive benefits. If that receptor interaction is cleaner, more continuous, maybe that positive feedback loop for mood and focus is just more stable over time, fewer peaks and valleys.
Interesting thought. Okay, but before we dive headfirst into the side effects, which, let's face it, is the main event here, I do want to push back slightly. If MK-677 gives that huge tidal wave GH surge, is there any argument that maybe that messier, higher amplitude pulse could actually be better for some specific goals? Like, say someone just needs maximum acute recovery, like right now in a super short window, could the bigger spike be beneficial then?
That's a fair question. It touches on efficacy versus tolerability, right? While maybe the sheer size of the GH pulse from 677 might feel more intense subjectively to some, the research seems to suggest that the controlled release from 777 actually leads to better long-term physiological outcomes.
Yeah.
It seems to achieve the benefits while reducing those really harsh trade-offs. Take bone health, for example, super critical, especially for aging populations. Both compounds show positive effects. But MK-777 seems to show slightly better, more consistent improvements in bone density markers compared to the older agent.
Okay, so even where the benefits seem similar on the surface, the more targeted approach of the newer generations still appears to deliver maybe cleaner, slightly better results overall. Reinforces that idea of real optimization across the board. All right. Now for the juicy part, where things get really interesting, and honestly, where the user experience with the first gen could be pretty rough. The side effects. The number one reason people seem to stop taking MK-677, that infamous appetite stimulation, and it's not just like, oh, I'm a bit hungry. It's described as this intense, almost ravenous, ghrelin-driven urge to eat everything, which is obviously a massive, massive problem if you're trying to diet or cut body fat.
Hyperphagia. Yeah, that's the clinical term. And that is absolutely the defining issue MK-777 was engineered to fix. Like we said, that first compound just couldn't fully separate the GH release signal from that powerful hunger signal that comes with mimicking ghrelin so strongly. And this is where our sources give us the absolute game-changing number, the crucial data point. The appetite stimulation reported with MK-777 is dramatically less. Specifically, around 68% lower than what users typically experience with MK-677.
Hold on. 68%. Seriously, as someone who's, tried to stick to a diet while feeling like their stomach is screaming, that's not just an improvement. That's almost like miracle territory. That's the difference between constantly battling the urge to read the fridge at midnight and actually maybe being able to stick to a calorie deficit.
Wow. It really is transformative for the user experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That 68% figure means they basically managed to dial down that hyperphagic response significantly without losing the desired anabolic signals. And we're talking, like you said, the difference between being able to follow a structured eating plan comfortably versus feeling like you need to constantly fight off overwhelming cravings. It makes the compound genuinely usable for goals way beyond just bulking up.
That's phenomenal. Just phenomenal. Okay, so appetite dealt with. What about the second big physical complaint? The water retention. That kind of puffy, bloated feeling people often reported with MK-677, which is super frustrating if you're aiming for a lean look. Did they tackle that too?
They did, and apparently quite successfully. That water retention with MK-677 is a known effect. It's linked to how GH and IGF-1 can temporarily mess with your fluid and electrolyte balance. Can definitely lead to that uncomfortable, puffy appearance. MK-777, by contrast, is specifically designed and noted in the literature as having reduced water retention. Again, it likely comes back to that increased receptor precision, minimizing those off-target effects on fluid regulation pathways. So yeah, it offers a much cleaner result aesthetically too.
Okay. Appetite down, bloating down. What about the third major concern, the metabolic side? Insulin sensitivity. Anytime you're pushing growth pathways hard, alarm bells start ringing about blood sugar control. How do they stack up on safety there?
This might actually be the most significant refinement, maybe even alongside the appetite reduction. MK-677 is definitely associated with some metabolic trade-offs. Users often see blood sugar levels creep up, maybe some signs of insulin resistance developing over time. It seems to be part of that, less targeted first-generation effect profile. What's really quite remarkable is that the redesign in MK-777 results in a significantly lower risk of those blood sugar and insulin issues. That improved metabolic stability we touched on earlier, it seems key. It means a compound is doing its main job without aggressively disrupting your fundamental glucose regulation.
So let's pull this all together for the listener. They're looking at these two options. If we synthesize the usability, why does MK-777 seem like the clear preference, even though both ultimately boost GH and IGF-1?
Because MK-777 represents, really, the successful outcome of very deliberate, targeted drug redesign. It seems to deliver those core anabolic benefits people want, the recovery support, the sleep improvement, potentially the muscle preservation, but critically, it removes or significantly reduces the three biggest liabilities that made the first generation so challenging for many users. You get the upside, but largely without the downside of intense cravings, noticeable water retention, and elevated metabolic risk. It's just a much more sophisticated, user-friendly tool because it demonstrates that crucial precision at the receptor level.
That really is the key takeaway, isn't it? MK-677 proved the concept works. You can effectively stimulate GH release orally, but MK-777 proves the next step in the science. With careful, targeted redesign, we can achieve those benefits while minimizing or even eliminating those really disruptive, uncomfortable, and potentially risky side effects. So summing it up, the shift from MK-677 to MK-777 looks like a leap from effective but messy tech to something much more precise, clean, and user-focused, driven in large part by that huge, roughly 68% reduction in the biggest user complaint, appetite.
Exactly. And this really leaves us with a fascinating final thought for you, the listener, to consider. What does this successful optimization of MK-777 actually tell us? The fact that they could isolate the desired effects, the GH release, from so many of the undesirable ones like appetite and metabolic disruption. What does that signal about the future potential for targeted drug design across other complex hormonal or peptide systems? I mean, if we can achieve this level of precision with something as notoriously multifaceted as the ghrelin system, how dramatically could this kind of approach revolutionize treatments for all sorts of things? Think obesity, maybe muscle-wasting conditions, even neurodegenerative diseases, potentially without the really crippling side effect trade-offs we often see now. That's the really exciting direction this kind of research points towards, something to really mull over.